Hey everyone, I'm Logan,
I'm Eric.
and we're joined by Holden PRIO, and he's gonna talk with us today about some cool CDH stuff and stuff he's been doing and decks he's been playing, stuff like that.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about him on the show in some of our brew sessions previously, but for people who may not be as familiar with you, Holden PRIO, who the heck are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm a CDH player now, but a longtime Magic player. I started playing in '99.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I've been playing for a long time. But actually, I'm out of the Arizona area. I'm in Tucson,
Oh, nice.
and I actually started playing CDH, or Commander. I've actually never played casual, but
Oh, that's
started
sick.
playing
Yeah.
yeah, CDH in January of 2023, so
Okay.
relatively recently. But like prior to that, when I very first started playing Magic, it was just, kitchen table, whatever. And then
Yeah.
very quickly turned into like opening packs at a store and like that kind of thing. I was like a little kid, so just trying to like enjoy and have fun. But I'm very analytical and logically minded, and I'm pretty competitive when it comes to like games and things like that.
Hmm.
So for me, it was just like immediately I started brewing. Like Mirrodin block came out,
Oh wow, yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great time to be like, just getting absolutely stuffed by 17 to 25 year olds as like a little 12 or 13 year old
Oh, man. Wasn't
in a
that the block
store.
that a Skull Clamp came out in?
I think
Oh yeah,
so.
all the
Yeah,
artifact lands,
that's
skull
actually
clamp.
when I started playing was Mirrodin block. Well, actually,
uh,
I don't know which was first, Kamigawa or Mirrodin, but it was one of those because I
Mirrodin
played.
was first.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I played both, and then I kind of stopped 2/3 of the way through Kamigawa, but then I didn't play until like 3 years ago. So I feel you on that.
Damn. Yeah, actually, I feel like I remember maybe you saying something like that in a
Hmm.
different video, because when you said that, that's almost identical to what my situation. Like I
Oh, that's
started a
so
little
cool.
sooner.
Yeah.
I stopped just a little bit after you did, like a little bit. I think like Planeswalkers got introduced,
Okay.
and I had a huge collection of my cards stolen, and I was just like,
No.
well,
Yeah.
I'm out. And
Yeah.
then a long time later, like I kept up a little bit with Magic, like here and there or whatever. And then a long time later, I came back in like 2017.
So that's kind of when your
So it's like,
CDH journey started, was kind of around that time, or was it a little bit later?
no, actually, when I came back in 2017, I got introduced to Modern,
Ooh.
because I didn't even know, like, I didn't know what Standard or Modern or any of that stuff was. In my mind, it was Type 1, 1.5, Type 2, and Extended. Like, I was just like, this is very different.
Okay,
So I
yeah,
started playing
yeah.
Modern, and I immediately just like brewed up like some crazy like mill strategies and stuff, and then I started taking things a little bit more seriously, and I also started playing Legacy at the same time because I like
Oh,
found some of my
nice.
old cards too,
Oh, heck yeah.
and yeah, it's pretty sad though. Like some of them are. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Just shed a single tear for the lost cardboard out there. But yeah, playing in Modern and Legacy just really kind of opened my eyes to all the stuff I missed during that time, like all
Hmm.
of the different eras of combo and tempo and
Mm,
control and mid range,
yeah.
and then allowing me to just start brewing like crazy. And I kind of have like an encyclopedic mind for cards. Like
Oh.
I can remember cards really, really well, like obscure ones that I've seen like one time while flipping through a damage binder kind of thing.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that helps because I will randomly like see a new card that gets spoiled, and I'll be like, oh, that works with, and then like name a card from like Prophecy block that I saw one time or
Holy
whatever,
cow.
like
Yeah, knowing those like
so
deep cut cards is pretty nice.
Yeah, I can barely
yeah.
remember the name of cards that have been in my deck for like the last year. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. Well, hey, let me be the
That's
first
funny.
to give you a belated CDH birthday congratulations, because you said it was in January of 2023, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh
you,
wow.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you just hit like the 2 year mark.
Yep. Yeah. And it's been an interesting journey. Basically, I was putting up some decent results in Modern and Legacy with like absolutely psychotic brews. Like I don't know if anybody knows me at CDH, you know that my stuff is like very out there, and like I'm really trying to push the envelope of like weird brews and that kind
Hmm.
of thing. but it doesn't even come close to what I was doing in 60 card formats. Like
I think you have a bit more
I
flexibility
took,
there because you have the ability to go like 4 cards deep, where you have 4 copies
yep.
of the same card, and you go, how does this card like bounce off of itself, or work with itself?
Yeah,
and
that's
that
a really
stuff.
good point.
But we don't have that.
Consistency is big for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, being able to like find your A plus B combos becomes a little bit easier, or being able to attack a meta in a very specific way is a little bit more not telegraphed, but like obvious, because the meta just is the meta. Like you're not gonna like show up at a tournament and see some crazy brew. Usually, you're just gonna see whatever's on Goldfish's front page or whatever for the most part.
I think that's a
so
good
like I
jumping
took down
off
a
point.
modern.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I took down a modern tournament with a home brewed. This is when Luris was legal, and everybody was like doing very specific like Death Shadow Luris stuff and like that kind of thing. I took down a modern tournament with Ally Tribal, using like Aether Vial and Cavernous
Wow.
Souls, and it had 4 angles of attack to win the game, like separate from each other, and was using like Return to the Ranks to convoke the allies into rebuying all of the ones I had self-milled into a Thassa's Oracle win.
Really? That's
So,
crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty cracked. And on top of that too, the sideboard package was like the most bonkers thing you've ever seen, and it cold beat the Archon of Cruelty decks because I was playing Unsettled Mariner, which is like a 2-drop 2/2 changeling that says whenever any of your stuff gets targeted, this is before ward, whenever any of your stuff or you get targeted, it has like a ward trigger basically. But what's messed up about it is that Archon of Cruelty is all 1 trigger. So
Holy cow. Yeah, it is. It is.
They can't pay for it. They don't draw. You don't discard. Like none of it happens. So yeah, I took down a comp tournament that like a local, I don't know, 50 or 60 person tournament or whatever with that, and I was just like, this is insane. And then Luris got banned a little after that. I'm like, whatever. And then a Legacy, I did the same thing with like a mono blue Thought Lash, Thassa's Oracle, Oops All Counter Spells deck.
Wow.
That was just like So that was kind of what led right up to me playing CDH was Then somebody was like, hey, you should play casual and here's a Nekusar. And
Jason.
I
Say hi.
basically just was like, nope, I'm good. And I don't want to play casual.
What's up, guys?
Oh, hey. What's up, Jason?
Yeah. Third member.
Hey, thanks for all the help and tech on Roxai.
Yeah. So speaking, I was going to use this as a jumping off point, like speaking of the meta and your assessment, and it seems like you have a good ability to look at what's going on in whatever format you're playing, and take that and go, okay, well, how do I attack this, or how do I use this to my advantage? Talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts were with this deck that we're about to talk about, and sort of why you decided to play at locals.
Yeah.
So basically,
well, first of all, what deck was it?
So this was, I'd watched some of your recent content and was really intrigued by that Rogsai deck that you called Wrongsai, which was basically just like all mid-range version of Rogsai. None of the Necro and Citadel and Ad Naus and all of the like good fast turbo stuff that you should be doing. Yeah. And instead just being like, no, I'll just hang out and then like find a win and just play Consecrated Sphinx and like Mirror Maid and copy Enchantment and copy Artifact and just every draw engine and Clever Impersonator, all of the stuff that normally would make me vomit into my own mouth. So it was really interesting to like see that and be like, like that's interesting. But that alone isn't what made me want to play it.
Okay.
It was also the conversation, and I think maybe it was between you, Logan, and Jason, but I can't remember which. It was like kind of talked about in 2 videos. But there was basically a small section where you had talked about this concept of wanting to play lots of meta decks in order to level up as a player. Like what you were doing, or actually I think it was between the 2 of you, what you were doing, or the 4 of you guys on Lumra, for example, was like super cool and interesting, but like you're not going to necessarily have the perfect skill set if you don't go out and put in a bunch of reps on Kinnan and a bunch of reps on TNK and a bunch of reps on TNT and like all these other meta top decks. Then you know exactly what to expect. You can start to really predict people's hands very well and like that kind of stuff. That to me was eye-opening, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I've thought about this before, but I've just been too stubborn to want to actually do it. And like I just want to play with my fun little toys.
Do you think this was like a weird enough angle for you to be like, okay, this is actually a good stepping off point into dipping my toes into what the actual meta is while still being different? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I've been interested in Glarb because I've got a local player here who's a good player who has been playing Glarb and has been like really putting me through the paces when I've been playing RAL, which is the deck I've been playing the most
Yeah.
and working the most on recently, which is just as fast as you could possibly go kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in those moments, I've been really like interested because I know what I'm doing like the back of my hand, and it's kind of like brain dead like for me at this point. Like I know the deck so well,
Hmm.
but watching his play patterns, I'm starting to think like, okay, if I was him, what would I be doing? And
Ooh.
sometimes I just don't have the answer to that question.
Right.
And I'm realizing like, wait, I just don't have the experience in playing these mid-range decks to know. And so then when I saw that episode, it kind of like was like click moment, you know?
Nice.
So
Well, hey, like that's great feedback. I'm glad we had some sort of positive impact on,
Oh, yeah.
the community. I mean, like that's kind of what we're trying to do. Is just obviously we're not like the source for inspiration or anything like that. But to hear that someone is as ingrained in the scene as you got something out of it, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think I can
sure.
definitely sympathize with that. Like, I think both me and Logan have really enjoyed paying attention to your decks over the last year or two, because I think we're both always interested in, you know, what is like pushing the format forward, or, you know, that one card you mentioned from like Prophecy Block that, you know, that really, takes your deck to that upper echelon. But also,
Ristic Study. Sorry, it was just too perfect.
That's a really
I
good
mean,
point.
come on.
But like that's super interesting. I think you're talking about playing, you know, Geralf, you know, mono blue at a previous tournament. You're probably not going to be playing against Geralf mono blue in you know the next tournament you go to. So even if you want to be kind of like playing that under the radar deck, you still need to be putting your reps in, getting that knowledge of all the meta decks, so that when you sit down in a pod with people who are playing, you know, the quote unquote like best of the best, you're able to outplay them and make that deck, you know, really shine. Yeah.
Yep.
I think maybe even more so, like when you're playing those decks. Like what I mean by that is like if you're playing TNK all the time, you're just playing all the good cards in a good deck that's like pretty proven. And sure, you could do some tweaking and stuff to that if you want, but it's going to be good. Like, and so you don't necessarily need to play all the other decks in the format to have a deep and fundamental understanding of what they're doing. You're not going to do as well because maybe you won't fully understand like every play pattern.
Yeah.
But if I'm playing a very fringe strategy and I don't deeply understand what's going on in everybody else's deck, like it's almost like I'm missing out on a big part of the reason for Brewer's advantage in the first place. I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think this goes to it connects to advice that I give new players a lot, and they're like, "Well, I want to play X deck," and I'm like, "Well, X deck is a fringe deck, and while it may be viable in a skilled brewer's or player's hand, it's not a good jumping off point for CDH in general, and you're not going to get the CDH experience that you need in order to play that deck at like a high level." So I always recommend new players start on the meta decks, start on like Blue Farm, start on TNT, start on maybe Kinnan. Kinnan's kind of a weird one. We've talked about that before, but a really good understanding of the meta is required to understand what fringe is. So
totally agree. Yeah. And no one will listen to that advice, but yeah, I totally agree.
no one listens.
I did it. I definitely didn't.
Yeah. I don't think I did either, but I mean, now that I'm in the position I'm in, I'm like, I'm going to shout until I'm blue in the face that that's the case.
Yeah. When I started, someone was like, this was back when like Diata was really good. They're like, what are you kind of interested in? I'm like, oh, the super fast turbo-y. And, you know, they're like, oh, you should play Diata. And I was like, I'm going to play Kalia of the Vast. Built it, got curb stomped, and never picked it back up again.
Yeah. And now you know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
For sure.
it gave me this experience of like, I could see in the distance where I wanted to be as a player and where I wanted the deck to be, but I just couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting there. And I think I now realize that kind of, all of us CDH players, regardless of what color wedges are favorite or what commanders we prefer, we all have a destination that we're going to, but a common pit stop for all of us is playing the meta decks, because that's just one of the steps you have to take in order to learn the meta, playing it well, and then, you know, build that off meta deck in a way that really lets you pierce through that pursued that meta.
I've started to focus on more of my journey as a player than as a particular deck builder or deck brewer. I still love brewing and I still do it a ton, but now I'm so focused on like my skills and my knowledge as a player and investing in that versus investing in, you know, am I going to play Maelstrom Wanderer and just be the Maelstrom Wanderer guy? Like that's not super important to me anymore, because if I can't win consistently, then like, am I good enough to even start shifting off of meta stuff? So
Holden, I would be super curious to hear. You've talked a little bit about your own journey that you've been on as a CDH player, but also this super long journey that you've been in as a Magic player. And I know something that gets tossed around is the idea that one of the ways to improve as a CDH player is to play other formats. I would love to hear your thoughts on either the way that your experience is in like Modern, you bring into like, you know, tournaments like Snowy Summit, or even now as you're trying to grow as a CDH player, is there like you know, an itch in the back of your brain like I should start playing some Standard just to make sure I'm, you know, what's that like for you right now?
God, I can't believe you even said that out loud.
Standard?
I should start playing
Yeah, I don't know.
some
I don't know
Standard.
that I would have said Standard.
Lord have mercy on my soul. Jeez. All right, I'm gonna let that one pass.
My bad. I'm sorry.
You're cool. Listen, there's 3 things I hate in Magic the Gathering. 1 is lands, 2 is the color green, and 3 is Standard. So it's totally fine. No, I mean that's mostly a joke. I understand like the appeal to Standard actually, especially when a card pool is smaller. It actually really tests the players themselves and like the matchups, and like it basically just like it narrows down the meta so much that like the tiniest percentage point really matters all of a sudden. Whereas like you got to think about it like if you show up, for example, in CDH, if you show up in Swiss and there's some deck that you've literally never seen before and it does some super absurd combo and kills the table on turn 1 or whatever, and you can only kind of get away with that once or twice.
Yeah.
But what does that matter for the other 3 players that all of a sudden didn't get any points? And now maybe those are really good players, but that screws up and now they're stuck in the Swiss swamp and then maybe they don't make top 16 as a result. Like that kind of doesn't happen the same way in Standard.
Standard
like,
is a really good way.
A fringe thing. Like,
Standard is a really good way to test your ability to assess bad cards.
That both sounds really funny, and also from what you're saying, I can really see some truth in that.
Yep, it goes down to a limited card pool.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like literally the biggest test of skill is draft, like is limited draft, because it's Standard to the utmost degree, but also you have all the mechanics that go into actual drafting. But anyways, that's kind of an aside. To answer your question, basically what I think about as it comes from 60 card formats, everything I know about Magic came from there. I have all of these like super small, almost heuristics, I guess at this point. They're just like habits, like second nature things that I do that I didn't see a lot of people in CDH doing. And I get that it might come across as very like spiky and like a grinder or whatever sort of mindset. But like, to me, it's kind of like, why wouldn't you min-max? Like, why wouldn't you play the best possible way kind of thing? And obviously the people at the top do that. So I'm not saying it's like absent from all of CDH, but I just find it's a lot more common that there's small things people miss or don't even know about in the first place. Like, I can't tell you how many times people like would, and this actually has happened on Twitter recently too, will like argue with me about rules, will argue with me about like how priority works, will argue with me about like what's a mana ability and what isn't.
I think he knows priority. It's in his name.
Yeah, you gotta hold it, man. It's like a sweet little child rested up against your shoulder, rock it to sleep. But yeah, I mean, it's all that sort of stuff that like, you know, the fact that Urza Saga doesn't just like come into play and make mana. There's a trigger that happens. Like, it's all these little things that are like, I mean, when I say it, it's like you guys know that, but it's also, if you don't, what's the right way to put this? If you don't fully understand what every tool you have can do, you're going to eventually miss an opportunity to use it for that specific use. And so that's a thing that I definitely learned from Modern and Legacy, and even a little bit of Vintage too, is just kind of like all these weird fringe edge cases that like Like, what happens when there's multiple replacement effects? Like, how do they work if you own all of them? What if you don't own all of them and one person owns one and you own the other? And like, how,
Yeah.
like these are things that like shouldn't matter, but came up twice last night because there were two Notion thieves in play. So like, these are the sorts of things that like, to me, really do level people up as a player in CDH that you can actually, they don't explicitly only come from 60 card, but I guess it's way more punishing in 60 card if you don't deeply understand
You
all
have
these
more
effects.
opportunities to learn them in 60 card as well, I think.
Yeah, they just come up more often.
Yep.
Because you see it more often.
Yeah, so I had a very similar experience with that with Glarb, because the deck, I think, is kind of inherently mid, at least the way I built it. The deck doesn't do a whole lot, so I have to optimize and maximize every single little tiny thing in order to get over that, like, it's a B minus tier deck, and like the cards in it don't really do a whole lot. So to get up to the A minus or A plus tier, I have to use every single tiny little piece to get it over the edge. So like that's like fetching at the right time, or using a fetch to shuffle your library because you don't like the card that's on top, or something like that. And I totally get what you mean about using all these tiny, like seemingly insignificant things to another player or a new player, and using those to give that 1 to 5% advantage, where otherwise you wouldn't have it.
Yeah, I think a common experience that a lot of people have. I know you said you didn't have a casual phase, but seeing people moving from casual to CDH, I think people are kind of generically aware of the card Urza Saga. But I think just that, for instance, I loved how you brought it up, how there is, an ETB effect of the lore counter going on. And a super common thing that we CDH players do almost every time the card gets played is you hold priority on the search to tap it and, create a colorless mana. But I think that can be a really confusing interaction for a lot of new players for a wide variety of reasons. And just part of, learning the format is learning little interactions like that, but recognizing that in the same way that knowledge gap exists between most casual players and most CDH players, is actually where you're talking about, Holden. There is another level of, whether it's like tournament knowledge or card interactions or just things you don't see as much in CDH, but you'd see a little bit more in standard or modern, that exists between, I really like the term you use, the Swiss swamp and the top 16.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to start using that.
I'm totally that's a really good way of putting it.
That's what it is, man. I'm just wading through it and like hoping to try to like catch a win in a couple draws and like get the hell out and like actually start playing real games.
Because it's such a different, like the games in Swiss are night and day different than the games in top 16.
Yeah, and I took that.
I brew for that specifically.
You brew for Swiss or you brew for top?
No, I like brew with both those concepts in mind. Like I ask myself the question of like, is this a Swiss deck or is this a top deck? And depending on which it is, really changes the way in which I'm mulliganing and the way in which I'm trying to approach each game. Like if I know that my deck is very favored against the field of a wide variety of odd, strange decks, then I'm going to push that advantage early, and I might not even be as incentivized to take draws because I want a high position when I'm going into top 16. Because by the time I get to top 16, there's a strong chance that there's going to be much higher skill players and also much more like no bad card decks, if you want to put it that way, like just like generically good decks.
We refer to Swiss as like Wednesday night CDH because that's our like practice and play with locals, and they still play CDH for sure, but there's tons of like discussions about, am I making the optimal play here, or I'm going to try out this weird deck and see how it does. And then we refer to Top Cut as like Saturday night or tournament day, and that's kind of like, that's how we refer to it. But yeah, I get your point where you have to consider both of those things when you're building a deck, and even acknowledge maybe my deck is not as good in Top Cut as it is in Swiss, or my deck is, an example, Glarb is insane in Top Cut but horrendously bad in Swiss. So like I struggled in Swiss, and as soon as I made Top Cut and I'm sitting against you in top 16, I'm like, I am so chilling right now. Aside from the fact that you had Thoracle Deconsult in your hand, I didn't know about that. But anyway, that's I guess immaterial. But
well, I think it is a great example of. I think you brought up heuristics, and I think it's important that every CDH player, if they want to get better, work to kind of figure out the relationship that they have with heuristics, because I think they can be really, really valuable. For instance, you talk about breaking down your deck into discrete elements of, is this a card that's really good in Swiss? Is it really good in top 16? Is it really good in both? Am I only able to use it effectively in Swiss? Am I only able to play effectively around it in top 16? Those can be really, really helpful tools to break down either the 99 or the 100% of you as a player, and understand where you need to grow, where you need to improve. But then there's also some areas where heuristics start to break down. And when you say, for instance, always counter the tutor, don't count what they're tutoring for.
Or the opposite.
Or the opposite. If you start overly relying on those heuristics, they can turn from, a help to a hindrance. Have you found as a player that you've had expectations going into tournaments, either of yourself or the pods around you, that you then kind of had to be
break
willing to either
down
more
or
go with the flow, or
Yeah, I think probably the biggest, I guess for me, the most difficult part about CEDH, like without question, is the fact that it is a multiplayer format, and so one of the biggest tools in your bag is collaborating with your other two, what I would call temporary teammates, to fight against your temporary opponent, right? And when I'm the temporary opponent and they are ganging up against me, then that's honestly when I feel the most comfortable, because it's just like, cool, I'm not, there's no collaboration happening here. Like, you guys figure it out, you have it or you don't. Like, I can try to make my case, I guess, but I'm usually not playing decks where like making a case is happening. I'm usually playing decks that are like, there's like raid horn sirens going off. Like every spell I put on the stack, the table is like freaking out and like calling their parents and stuff. So like that's a very different experience, because for me it's big danger everything I'm doing most of the time, and that's okay. I think that's a big part of the reason probably why I play those decks, is because I'm so used to, like, it's just me against my opponent, parentheses S. Like, if there's multiple, who cares? I'll take it 1v3 or 1v1. It's still me against them. And that's probably why, inherently, I didn't really feel as comfortable wanting to go into these decks that like want to politic and play slower and find windows and that kind of stuff. I just want to be the biggest, baddest, scariest, fastest, and also the most obscure and confusing for my opponents. And those will be the tools I use, if that makes sense. So one of the big heuristics that I had to really work on is just reminding myself that just because someone's about to make a play, or like they don't understand what I'm doing and they're scared and so they're going to force it, or like whatever's happening, it doesn't just mean that that's the end of it. Like, I don't just accept that fate and move on. It's really okay to like pause and say to them, like, hey, do you want to talk through this for a moment? Because maybe this seems really scary to you, but I just do want to point out, like, I have no mana at all on board. And even if the scariest thing you think is going to happen happens, I still have to pass the turn from here, or whatever. Like, obviously this is some obscure hypothetical situation, but like putting a wheel on a stack, for example, a lot of times people are like, oh God, he's in a turbo deck and he's wheeling, like, this is really bad.
Yeah.
But then I look and point at my, second seat player and say, I've just drawn them 25 cards off a Ristic Study because I stormed off into a Ristic Study. Like, if this wheel doesn't resolve, you lose the game to them. Like, and that was that for me, that heuristic of previously, if I'm got, like, cool. Do they have a pack? Do they have a force? All right, cool. I'm done. But now it's like, no, there's a lot more happening here than just that.
So I can sense that you're using a little bit of your experience from yesterday, and then also probably talking about like your experience with RAL. And do you think that this deck is starting to provide you with more tools that you're not used to having?
Definitely, but also, like, they're not tools that I wasn't aware of. They were just tools that, like, I didn't play decks that could use those tools.
Yeah, I just meant like you're not used to playing them. Like you
oh, for sure.
Just a
not at all.
deck.
Yeah. Every deck I have brewed with very little exception. There's a couple that are exceptions, I guess, but like my Mox build, I think, has like 100 separate brews on it or something like that. Like, every deck that I have brewed has been very combo or synergy focused or turbo focused. and maybe the one exception would be to try to play a slow game and win in a way that's like uninteractable, like Hashaton or something like that. But for the most part, that's still combo. That's very combo focused, and it's still kind of the same mindset. Whereas, piloting this deck has been a lot more of an experience of slowing things way down, playing each moment to moment, like reading the table, like realizing that I don't need to jam or go for it literally ever. Like just never. Like we'll just play this game forever, and I'm okay with that. Like
I will die at this table.
Yeah, it was very weird. Like, yeah, I can't wait to talk about the games. But like,
well, let's go.
Yeah,
Let's go right into it.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about it. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, just for
all right, hold on before you get started into the games. All right, so we kind of alluded to like you had started to talk to me about the list. You had watched a little bit of our content on it, and at that point, like it was just musings between me and some friends about it because we had all played Rogsai, and we had been playing like an alternative strategy with Rogsai where it's more like waste not and sort of just like trying to rip wheels and stuff like that, and that was good. But now we're kind of like, oh well, I think there's like a different strategy here in kind of the clone Ristic and just sit there and wait and try to flash on top. So outside of those conversations, like I had played it a little bit at our locals, Jason had played it, and we just released a video on that where Jason and I were talking about his blue farm, which is kind of doing the same thing as this list. And so like the night before, like what's going through your mind with just playing a new deck, especially at like a locals, which is a small tournament to be fair, but it's still a tournament.
Yeah, it's just like there's still a buy-in, there's still prizing.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, the biggest thing, like literally, it was two very clear things, and one of them is like a total meme. So the two things are, one, RAL is the fastest deck in the format, and you won't convince me otherwise. Like to me, it's not even close to Roxai, like as far as speed goes, just from my experience. Now that said, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than Roxai, even though it quite obviously is, and everyone knows that. But obviously the results show that too, right? Like look at all the top results with RAL. No, but I know this is very tongue in cheek, but trying to detach myself a little bit from my extreme bias with that deck is hard. But if I could, I would say that I really do think that if your goal is to go as fast as possible and underneath the meta, it's a great deck to play if you have the skills to play it. And it's confusing as all get out when you start doing these really weird trigger storm loops and all this other stuff, but it's very doable. Like if you are confident with storm. So I was thinking about that for quite a while, and all the time there would be people who'd be like, well, if you want to play turbo, you should play Rogsai. And I'd be like, well, I just want to play a faster turbo deck, so that's why I'm playing RAL. And they'd laugh and they'd be like, there's nothing faster than Rogsai. So it's like kind of like this ongoing joke. So that was part of the reasoning, right? It was in my mind. I sent a message to like, we have like a Facebook Messenger chat or whatever with like most of the people that are playing at this local, just to like give updates about whether or not the store's closed or what time it's, whatever's going on. And I just sent a message that was like, hey, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but I might play mid-range tonight and something a little bit slower. And then someone will like respond with a question mark or something. And I was like, and they were like, what deck? And I was like, Rogsai. And then like all these people started laughing. And I was like, but no, really. And then when I showed up,
really.
Yeah, and then when I showed up, they were like, so are you playing mid-range or are you playing RAL? And I was like, I'm playing mid-range. And then I put Rogsai on the table, and they all started laughing again. I was like, no, really? Like, so like that was part of it. Right?
Did you have a conversation with them about like, hey, I'm not running Nas, I'm not running Necro, that sort of thing? Or did you just play Rogsai and not even have that conversation?
I had the conversation in every pod. Most of the time, only one person would believe me. Like people who know me really well know that I'm like, I don't lie like that in games at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there is a reason to. It's to win. It's to try to angle shoot people. But like, I don't like that reason, like personally. So what I did is I just flipped the deck upside down and fanned it out on the table. And I was just like, I'm actually playing mid range. Like I just showed them, like, and I was like, I don't care. Look at the Aura Thief. Like, look at the tech. It doesn't make a difference to me. What are you gonna do to play around that? Like, you're gonna counter my Aura Thief on the stack? Awesome. I got a counter under your hand. We're just gonna keep going. Like, yeah. What difference does that make to me? Like, if you want to force of will an Aura Thief, that's hilarious, and I can't wait to talk to somebody else about that later. But it's not gonna like stop me from winning the game. Like, so to me, it was like totally fine to just face up what I'm doing because nothing I'm doing is secretive. Like, whereas I could never do that on any of my other decks because I don't want them to see the Prologue, the Phyresis, and Rad Storm in my like crazy Storm Infect Malcolm Tevishzot deck or whatever weird deck I was playing that day. You know, like I don't want them to see the spice, quote unquote. Yeah. And so that was a big part of it. And also, I just wanted to play. I wanted to play mid range. I wanted to put cards like Copy Enchantment and Mirror Maid and Clever Impersonator and things like that into my hands and see if the hype is actually there. Like, because there's a world where all I see from a lot of CDH content, because it's what's winning right now, is all this talk about all these mid-range decks. Yeah. And there's this voice in the back of my head that's like, yeah, but they're all dumb. Those cards are bad. And that is a very, in my opinion, like closed-minded or narrow-minded way to approach what is just objectively the truth, which is those decks are winning. So instead, why don't I be open-minded, take a deck like that, put it in my hands, pilot it, see how it feels, see how it plays. And honestly, my expectation was to crash and burn. Not that I wouldn't understand how the cards work, but just like I wouldn't be able to pivot my gameplay style enough to match with the deck. So that was, my expectation was low, very low.
Okay, so that's like leading up into it. Day of tournament, you sit down in game one. Just kind of run me through like your thought process and then maybe talk about the game a little bit and see what happened. Yeah.
So what's weird is right before we actually played, I played just a friendly match just to like
warm up.
Just like, yeah, like kind of like warm up and play with some people. And we literally had this moment where there were 2 Notion Thieves in play and other draw engines. And then I had to like kind of deep dive a little bit more just to confirm the way that works with Notion Thief, which was like kind of odd scenario or whatever. So I got like a little bit in the weeds on like a warm-up game. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like I have no desire. Like I drew 45 cards that game or something stupid. And I was like, I don't want to do that all night tonight. Like that's going to suck. And I hate that. Like, and I had RAL also with me. And so I was just like,
already that seed of doubt is like planted right at that point.
100%.
Yeah. Which you just love that right before a tournament.
That's what I look for.
My favorite thing about tournaments is right beforehand when I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, it's the best. This is the best part. I sit down in our pod and I have both. In the first round of the game, okay. I have both decks in front of me, and I'm just holding both of them, and I literally just like looked at the pod and said to them, I was like, I really don't think I can do. Like, I don't think I can play mid range, and they were like, well. Yeah, I guess. And like they didn't really have a response. I was hoping one of them would be like, yeah, you can't. And then like that would, goad me into doing it. Or I was expecting one of them to be like, play RAL like that. We like that or something, right? I wanted some input. No one gave me any input. And I was just like, all right, whatever. I'll just try it. Like it's a small event, whatever.
Sure.
So I unfortunately didn't take photos of all of my opening hands, but I actually did take a photo of that opening hand.
Oh, nice.
And I was on probably a bad keep now that I'm looking back at it. I had mulliganed to 6, and I kept Land, Gamble, Mental Misstep, Chain of Vapor, Felwar Stone, Clever Impersonator, Rhystic Study. And my thought process was, what's the worst I do here is I just go, I Mental Misstep somebody else's draw engine, win attempt later. And already that is a mistaken thought process that I'm like starting to look back on. Like, I don't think Mental Misstepping like an Esper Sentinel or a Fish was the right call in that scenario. Because
preach, bro.
There were no turbo players there. It was Master of Keys, which I guess is a little bit more combo turbo, but like focused. Like it has like a very straightforward game plan of just like doing the breach thing out of the yard and like Abdel Adrian, whatever. Glarb, and TNT. So it was like, there's going to be stuff for me to copy. This game can definitely go long, and if I just lean into that, I'll be fine. And like a god, I ripped a land off the top because like Magic's so easy. But even if I hadn't, I
hey, that's what happens when you run 26 or 27 lands, right? Yeah. You can get a land off the top. Yeah. Well, not 16 like some RAL players.
Yeah, dude, who would do that? Only 12 real actual lands in your deck? That's weird. Jesus. 3 vegetable sources. But yeah, that was part of the thought process. Was like, well, there's a bunch of lands in the deck, so like this is actually not that bad. And I didn't want to like mulligan pretty deep and then just feel super far behind. Plus, I already had the Rhystic in my hand. I also had a Chain of Vapor, which was castable, and I had a Mental Misstep, which was castable, and a Gamble, which was castable. So it's kind of like, even if I don't do a whole lot in the beginning, I'm still doing something. And then eventually I'll hit a land kind of thing. So I just ripped the land off the top and played slow. Like I just went like, unfortunately, like I said, I Mental Misstepped a Esper Sentinel. I was in seat 3, so it was Glarb in 1, Master Keys in 2, me in 3, and then TNT in 4.
Okay.
Seat 2 was Esper Master Keys, and they put an Esper Sentinel on the stack, and I misstepped it. And we went to my turn, and I ripped a land off the top, played a land, played Rog, and cast the Gamble to try to find like a ritual, like so that I could ritual out the Rhystic Study the next turn. So I put a Gamble on the stack. Already, this is very, very turbo-minded play. I put a Gamble on the stack, and Glarb Mental Missteps my Gamble, which was odd, especially because I had that's one of the players I'd already played with, so they knew that I was just on mid-range stuff.
Right.
So like, if Rogside gambles, maybe you're scared that they're just gonna like slam an LED Echo or like some, I don't know what the hell a normal Rogside deck does, but like maybe that's what they're thinking. But like, I've never played Rogside. So don't worry about it. I mean, I know they do the breach stuff, but like, I don't even know like in a normal game if a normal Rogside player puts a gamble on the stack on with like no other rocks or anything.
It just depends.
Like, do you misstep that? Like, I don't know. Like, but
a lot of people are on the misstep. Like, you see a misstep opportunity, use it because misstep's not that valuable. I'm in the total opposite camp. I think I'm trying to convert. I think Eric's pretty much in the same spot, where misstep is so valuable. I'm sitting on misstep until someone's trying to win, or someone puts a silence on the stack, or someone puts a Veil of Summer or a deconsult or something.
For me, it's deconsult and silence are like the big scaries. So exactly, you want to stop those. But anyways, so that got misstepped and whatever, and I even laughed in that moment when it happened, and I immediately did the thing I was just talking to you guys about, where like instead of having a conversation about that, I just like let it resolve. And I really should have told them like, hey, I'll show you face up what I get. I'll go get a land. Like this is not scary, you know?
Right.
Or I'll get a ritual or whatever. Like, I'm just trying to play my hand, and I'm like kind of low on mana sources, so I figured this was decent. But instead of having that conversation, I chuckled and let it get countered, which was dumb. And then what happened? We immediately went to C4, and TNT put a fish in play. And now I don't have my misstep. The Glarb doesn't have their misstep. And normally this wouldn't matter too much because there would be another Esper Sentinel in play, and like there would be a little bit more play here. But instead, it's everyone has nothing, and we don't have our missteps, and now there's also a fish in play. And so it's just like, all right, well, this kind of sucks. So that's just like how the start of the game went. And then the entirety of the rest of the game was me getting further and further back into my chair and just like slouching into what personally felt like the most boring possible play style you can play Magic.
Hell yeah.
In the moment, I was thinking that. I'm like, this is so boring.
Hey,
like, why am I not just winning the game?
Yeah, I just made a mistake by playing this. Now I'm locked in for another 3 rounds or however many, and you're like, fuck.
This is an hour of my life I'm never getting back.
So because I had a Rhystic in hand and a rock, I just went like turn 2 lamp rock, pass. Turn 3, tap out for Rhystic, that resolved, pass. And meanwhile, the fish player has been paying for fish and has been big scary. Like, has been like ripping a bunch of cards off the top to the point where Glarb get probed the the fish player, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, and saw what was going on in that hand, or like oppoed a fetch and saw what was going on, or something. There was some way he got the information from the hand.
Right.
And so we're all scared. Like we're like, yeah, we see what's happening here, right? So also the Esper player, Master Keys, had been put so far into the dirt by me misstepping that Esper Sentinel that they were like not helpful at all for quite a while, which was kind of like this other weird side effect where it's like I almost kind of want some help if my deck is parasitic about the Rhystic stuff. Like I almost kind of like want to be able to copy artifact your Esper. I almost want you to get some mana so you can slam your Rhystic so I can mirror make Rhystic. And like that's a weird thing. Like I'm not used to that.
It's so backwards to think about it like that, but I almost want my opponents to have an Esper or some sort of draw engine so that when I have a draw engine, I'm like, hey, I want to play the game too. We're all in the same we're all in the same spot, we're all on the same level playing field. And now when someone tries to go for it, like it's a hard wall when there's three people that have these draw engines. It's you can't push through that.
Yeah, I think a good analogy that comes to mind is that I think we often talk about as CDH players is you don't want to play to lose, you want to play to win, right? I think similarly, I'm not worried about my opponents having Rhystics. I just want me to have more. Because then I can create this world exactly like what you're talking about, where even if there's one player that's really far ahead, they just can't win through 3 or 4 Rhystics. And by the time I go for a Rhystic, I'm totally fine because I have, I don't know, Mirror Maid, Copy Enchantment. I've ensured that even though everyone has a lot of resources, I have more.
Right.
Yeah. And this is my literal first time in that mind space, I guess. So it was like a bit odd.
Do you feel your brain like rewiring as you're sitting there and you're like looking back at the table and you're going,
I could hear it. There was like weird creaking noises instead. My brain is made of wood. It's like some sort of oak. And it was just like I could like feel the new grooves.
Does anyone else smell smoke? Or is that just me?
Burnt toast, am I having a stroke?
Yeah, I definitely was. But yeah, I mean, so then the game was just all interaction. It was just like killing people's stuff, bouncing people's stuff. I chained. So eventually, the Master of Keys player uses Steel Enchantment on my Rhystic Study, and instead of fighting over it, I was just like, all right. And then we went to my turn, and I just used Chain of Vapor. They had 2 lands in play. I used Chain of Vapor on their Steel Enchantment, knowing they can just cast it again next turn cycle. But in the meantime, I'll draw some cards in the process, and I had drawn, I think, into a fish. So I Chain of Vapor their thing and also was like, copy it, you won't. Like, you have 2 lands in play. Like, I don't care. Like, do whatever you want. Whatever. And they were like put into this really tough spot, and they didn't copy it because that would have just put them so much further behind. They had like a Children of Korlos in play and a Doom Whisperer in the graveyard. So a lot of the table was like worried about like some sort of reanimation that was going to happen there because that just like lets you. Doom Whisperer is the one where you can pay 2 life and surveil 2. It's like a big 6/6 flyer. So like that's a scary kind of interaction because you just pay a bunch of life, fill up your yard, and then sack the children, gain all the life back, do it again. You get to basically play your whole deck in your graveyard, which is bad for Esper Underworld Breach deck. So yeah, that was like just a weird play pattern. We went to my turn. Because when the Steel Enchantment goes back to hand, the Rhystic comes back into your side of the board. So we go back to my turn. I continue to develop the board. I play a fish or whatever, and eventually I get to the point where I, in my hand, have a Final Fortune, a Breach, some ritual effects, and a High Fate Trickster. So I like have a pretty rolled up win, and there's I think a gamble too. And my yard had gotten filled up with like some fetch lands and some smaller spells that were like less relevant. I think I also had a backsided Birdie, like Hornfell in play.
Oh, okay, so you're in a good spot.
Yeah, but the thing is the rest of the table also had a bunch of stuff. So like Glarb had Glarb plus Gale in play and a lot of scary instants and sorceries in the graveyard and was just like keeping mana open. And I was like, oh god. And then we make it around the turn cycle. I completely decimate the TNT player's board, like with help from the table. So I politic to use an Bowmaster and then like jam into their Rhystic to kill the TNT board because it was there was like, I want to say there was like they had both Timna Thrasios out and also like one or two other creatures. So, and they had, the way they were playing was very like, it seemed very telegraphed that like they're about to try to like go for it on their upcoming turn. And we have to choke them off of what it will take them to recast the Thrasios. Normally I don't kill Thrasios, but like in that situation, it kind of made sense. So I have this like huge orc army, and I can't remember all the specifics of how this ended up happening, but because the game had gone so long, I'm really carefully watching the clock. And so we're down to like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes of the round, and we make it back to my turn. And
you probably have the tools at that point on with like 4 or 5 minutes. I'm not saying that you're stalling out the game, but you have so many problems that you can present at that point that you're like, it's ending on my turn. Is that the case?
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of the weird part is in hand, I had like 3 to 4 different paths to victory. I think I also had a meme bet in hand.
Oh,
so like
sheesh.
I had all these different ways to go for it. But
yeah,
as we've talked about, like I don't want to be the one to push. And so what I did was I think I tacked at a Ragavan. I think I tacked Ragavan at the like TNT player or somebody. I like maybe played one small thing. Like I used like 1 or 2 pieces of mana. So I have like 3 lands on tap, and I have, oh no, pardon me, it was frontside Bergie. So I have the mana engine in play for Bergie.
Okay.
So as we're going towards my end step, TNT is completely untapped with mana, but they don't have a lot going on board. So they put a Tainted Pact on the stack in the end step because they're looking at the time on the clock, and they're like, okay, I need a Tainted Pact here, try to fight through some interaction. If it resolves, great. If it doesn't resolve, we're going to go to my turn, and then people have less interaction, and then I can try to go for it again, right? Like that was the general thought process. And I just looked at the table, looked at the clock, and thought about like what my window was, and was like, this seems like the best moment because the first 2 players passed. And as a reminder, TNT is 4 and I'm 3. So like 1 and 2 passed and it got back to me. So it gets back to me. And on top of that, I put a whatever on the High Fate Trickster on the stack that resolves. And then we really start fighting because there's a Rhystic in play. We just start kind of going back and forth. I have the Bowmaster, and then the Bowmaster is starting to do work on top of all of that.
Oh yeah.
And each spell that I'm casting is also generating red mana. And I get to a point where I'm choked on colored mana, but it kind of doesn't matter anymore because I have the Breach in hand and I have instant speed and there's a Gamble in my graveyard. So even though I am choked on red mana or choked on colored mana, all I have is red mana from Bergie. I'm going neutral or positive on every spell that like it kind of doesn't matter. So any of the free counter spells that I started to draw into and cast made them draw more cards, which then triggered my Bowmaster and made me mana off. So it was just like the classic, like I've got a bunch of advantage pieces. I make my push, but I have a flash enabler in play. Everybody tries to do all their stuff. What seems like I'm down and out, I put a Final Fortune on the stack. This is before Breach. Put a Final Fortune on the stack.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh shit, like, and there was like a minute left on the clock or something like that. So it's kind of like, what do we, like, if we give him a turn, we lose.
Yeah.
And so then they really had to like throw more ammo at it. And I just let all that stuff resolve. And I was just like, okay, yep, everything gets countered and bounced and all the stuff that you want. Cool, stack's clear, awesome. Breach on the stack. and then it was like a just like obvious win, but I couldn't completely tell what was going on in people's hands because they weren't like their poker faces, like they weren't really telegraphing that they were like out. Like they weren't like, oh, I'm done. You know, there was none of that. So I just gambled for a defense grid and put a defense grid into play.
Yeah, there you go.
And once the defense grid resolved, then I looked at the table and I was like, do you want to concede? Like, because they were tapped out from mana and there was a defense grid in play. I had a Breach in play, gamble in the yard with enough cards to, like I had like at least, I don't know, 7 or 10 cards.
Enough to convert
like
that into something.
Yeah.
Get LED and then dump your hand and then you're good.
And at that point, when they were like, they didn't want to concede. I'm not really, there was some weirdness that happened, but that's more of like personality stuff. It was like kind of unrelated to the game. I just showed them, I was like, I have a windfall in hand and a bowmaster in play, and that player has 11 cards in hand. So each time I windfall, I'm going to just kill one of you, like around the table.
Yeah.
So yeah, they made me play it up, but that's what I did. I just, instead of trying to like go for some more convoluted line, I just like gambled for LED and then just started looping windfall.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
that was that first game, and it was a perfect example of all of the things that the deck is supposed to do. Flash enablers, holding up your win until literally the last possible moment, not trying to push the window too early, like all that stuff. So it was
So
pretty
what are
amazing.
you feeling after that game, being so ambivalent going into it with, like, you had literally 2 decks sitting in front of you. You're going, you know, the old and busted or the new hotness. Like, what am I going to pick? And then now that you come off that win, like, what are you feeling?
I was very happy and excited that playing so slow and so patient, and like just letting stuff resolve if it wasn't like exactly grand abolisher, you know, like that was kind of like, that felt really good. But honestly, I had like emotions were extremely high at the end of that game, and there was some frustrating words that were happening. So and the entire store was standing around watching the game also, because we were like past time, you know, and like and so there was, you know, that sort of side of things. So I didn't have a whole lot of like
time
clear-minded reaction to it. And then immediately I just had to like shuffle up and play into the next game.
How many rounds were there?
So there was just 3 rounds that night.
So maybe not to go as deep on the next 2 rounds, but like what was your sort of overall, like in round 2, kind of just give me the 30,000 foot view of what happened.
Yeah, because you kind of told us that like in your first game, super low, and then it kind of like slowly picks up, and then for a couple different reasons, right after your win, you're still pretty high, but maybe you know tensions are high. You don't have time for a bathroom break. You're off to the next pod. So yeah, exactly like Logan said, that kind of like that kind of flyover view of the rest of your games.
Yeah, basically the second round I just forced a draw. Like I got like turbo dumpstered out of the game. Like it wasn't even close. And I've been in that seat a million times before. Like that's where I thrive in RAL, because all RAL does is just like look at the table and be like, do I win the game? And then they're like, no, interact. Like, cool, lava dart, flashback, lava dart, force of will. Like, I just like start putting instants on the stack, flip RAL in response to your thing and win the game. Or you have enough pieces of interaction to actually beat it. And great. Like, the game ends very quickly for me in the sense that I'm no longer doing my proactive part of the game.
Right.
The second phase of the game now starts, which is I'm going to do every single thing I can to tank every single person in the game for making the correct decision, and I'm going to pit every one of you against each other to force a draw. And like if there's a Ristic Study in play, I'm going to jam a Mox Diamond into it with no lands in hand. I don't care anymore. All I care about is turning one person into a villain and looking at the other 2 people and being like, if you don't take a draw, I'm just going to keep jamming into this person. And like that's, I don't know, that's not necessarily like it's not the most productive way to be playing, because it's not playing for a win at that point, but it's also not playing like
you're not playing for a loss either.
More points than 0. So like I'll take the point, right?
Do you think the deck has like the requisite tools to force draws? Because I think that's something I consider a lot now with Rog side, the one you're playing. You said you forced a draw, but like was it easy to do?
It was a lot more political than I'm used to. Whereas like with RAL, it's like I actually have the tools in my hand, and like every top deck card I'm drawing, I can start trying to force this stuff. That I can do weird stuff in that deck. Like there's a lot of cards that like I can like take control of somebody else's creature and then like do weird things with what I'm just playing very odd and fringe cards, and also playing on a weird axis. And all of the cards have flashback. So like if there's a Ristic in play, I can just spin my wheels and draw a bunch of cards. Like, and because the meta is in this place where there's all these Ristics, I can just like, ask the table, do you want your opponents to have 7 more cards? If not, we should take a draw. And then they call my bluff, and I start putting spells on the stack. And I'm like, how about now? Did you want to take a draw? And I start putting more spells on the stack. And like, I can force that, right? In RAL. In this deck, it was a little bit more like I had a copied Trouble in Pairs in play.
Oh my
Someone
God.
else had somebody else had the original Trouble in Pairs in play. And then the other two players, one was a Talion player. Talion had Talion, Polywog Prodigy, Spellskite, and Notion Thief in play. And T&K copied the Notion Thief. And before T&K copied the Notion Thief, they were a brand new player, like brand new to CDH. They're not a new Magic player. I told them, hey, this literally just came up before the tournament started.
Yeah.
Are you familiar and comfortable with how these double replacement effects work? And they weren't. And so we kind of talked through it first. And then I was like, if you have removal instead, please use the removal on the Notion Thief, because it's not what's going to happen is the two of us, the two Trouble in Pairs players, we get to choose who gets the cards now. So if two attackers attack and there's double Notion Thief in play, I can just look at the T&K player and be like, I choose you. That replacement effect happens, and now their cards get replaced, and instead the Talion player gets it. So whoever I pick, the other person gets it. So I get to essentially give cards to whoever I want, and so does the other person with the Trouble in Pairs. They were a Hashaton player, actually, and they had a Archon of Emeria in play. So like no storming was really happening either. So the game was like super slow, and I basically just caused every single grievance and problem available to the table every time I had an opportunity. I wasn't stalling for time at all either. Like I was like playing very rapidly and walking people through priority and stuff, because I hate that. I don't want somebody to just be like, can I look at your graveyard? Can I look at your graveyard? Like I don't, that to me, that is angle shooting, like in my opinion. But you know, whatever, different people have different opinions, but yeah, basically that was it. I just like I talked to T&K, I coached the T&K player through how to present a win by forcing a bunch of spells on the stack and then putting a brain freeze on the stack. We knew about his hand because of a Git probe, putting a brain freeze on the stack while he had a Mnemonic Betrayal in hand. And I was just like, just brain freeze me. Like I just have a bunch of rituals in my deck, and I already have a Dark Ritual in the graveyard. And so that did two things. One, it means if I top deck something good and then I find a way to a win, that's good for me. Like I can breach. But two, it also means that it is actually scary. Like what I was saying was honest to the table. And I looked at the Italian player and I was like, do you guys want to take a draw? Like he's going to brain freeze and then meme bet the table. And what are you going to do about it? Like, are you able to fight this alone? Because I have two cards in hand, and the Archon of Emeria player has two cards in hand.
Exactly.
And the Archon of Emeria was doing crazy work. This is why I hate stacks effects like that, because I was able to then use their stacks piece to like hold a gun to the table by being like, oh, you want to stop them from winning the game? I'm going to pact your counterspell off the stack, and you can't cast any more spells this turn. So I'm going to give the game to the other player. Like basically, if you guys don't take a draw. And so I kept talking them through this, but I didn't have any gas in hand to back it up. Like I didn't actually have a counterspell in hand. I was just saying like, this is what's going to happen when we get to that point. Then they resolved the Shieldred. Then they copied the Shieldred. So they both have Shieldreds. Like, dude, this game was a cluster.
It sounds like it was moving to a draw, like regardless of what you were doing, but you're able to talk through and sort of just still push it in that direction, because that's a game where that's a classic Swiss game, especially around here. I mean, we see like random stacks deck plus two meta decks plus another player that's like, well, I'm new, but like I still kind of need that like extra help from the table to kind of get over the line. And a lot of those games just end in draws if you can't convert. So,
which
I was just gonna say, I think the play of the game for me, looking back on it, was I used a Mystical Tutor when the Archon of Emeria came down. I used it because I was very early. That was before everything else got set up. So the Archon of Emeria was the biggest threat. And I realized, oh God, if I'm the one who removes this stacks piece, I'm going to hand the game to everybody else. So I face up Mystical Tutored for a Deadly Rollick and then never cast it. And just held it at the table the entire game. And then eventually, when someone else had removal, I aimed it at the Notion Thief on the Talion's board, so they were forced to Spellskite it. So they took the life from the Spellskite. We kill the Spellskite, and then the other player can now use their removal on whatever we needed to, the Shieldred or the Notion Thief or whatever. So, and I just never removed the Archon. I just let the Archon force the table into a draw, and I backed up the Archon with my hand. Like when people would try to mess with it, like I use that interaction there.
Unless you're like banking a lot of mana and you're held up by like a Collector Roof or something, and you're the person to remove the Collector Roof. Unless there's these specific situations, I think if you're the one to remove or deal with the stacks piece early, like you're probably losing. And I think it was pretty impressive to hear that you recognize that and you're already using these cards or just like showing that Mystical Tutor. Obviously you have to for that one, but let's say you imp sealed and you're like, I'm still going to show you the card, but
I would for sure.
Right. Yeah. Then you put it in hand and you go, okay, well, I've just made a political decision by doing that. And then that actually leverages more weight than the card itself against the table. So that's awesome to hear. How did game 3, or I guess your final Swiss round, go?
Yeah, I won that round. And it was on the back of, so it was twofold. One of the turbo players made a mistake in their Doomsday pile, which I like very easily and early in the game cold read them on having Doomsday. Like that's what they're going for because the commander lent itself to that. It's like Vohar, it's the Demir like looter that you can recast stuff out of the graveyard.
Yep.
So what was crazy about that game though is the way that game started. Again, I was in C3 all night at all three games. So seat 1 was Kinnan, and they played a fish, and we let it resolve. And I just looked to so seat 2 was the Turbo Demir player, seat 3 is me, and seat 4 was Tibbet.
Okay.
And the Tibbet player I've actually played against a decent amount, and they are impossible to read what their game plan is and what's going on. And they're very calm, cool, and collect. And they don't like punt very often or anything. Like they're a pretty tight player, good player. I respect their play quite a bit. They normally play Kinnan too, which was cool because then they could help us assess the Kinnan plays.
Yeah, that's
because
really
the Kinnan started becoming the biggest threat at the table also. So they put a fish in play, and I just looked at the Vohar player, and in my hand was 6 non-creature spells and a Burgi, or it was like 5 non-creature spells, a Burgi, and a land or something like that. So I just looked at the Vohar player and I was like, fish packed? Like, do we want to just like bury this Kinnan into the dirt? And he just looked at me and was like, sure. So we just played so slow. We went 3 rounds around the table. I swear to God, I went turn 1, Rograk land, turn 2, Phyrexian Tower, sack the Rograk, tap the other land for Silas, turn 3, recast the Rograk with the 2 lands normally.
Oh, that's so sick.
So I just literally have Rog Sai in play and all like Diabolic Intent, Culling the Weak, Infernal Plunge, like all this fast mana stuff in my hand, and a Birdie in hand, and a Mirror Maid, a Rhystic Study, and a Consphinx. So
pretty good.
We forced the fish to die because Kinnan misses their 3rd land drop. So we know that this last round around the table will be the last round. So now I know the floodgates are about to open because the combo player is about to go before me. And when they did, they went for a Doomsday pile, and I guess there was a mistake in deck construction or something, and they missed the line basically. And they're also a good player. They just normally don't play that deck. Normally they play blue card. So they have to pass the turn after cracking their Doomsday pile. And the whole table was just like, like we just let out a sigh of relief. We go to my turn, and I just like sack everything on board to make a bunch of mana with a Burgi in play, floating a bunch of red mana, recasting the Rog to Jeska's Will for like making a bunch more mana, and then windfall the table, which is going to kill the combo, the Doomsday player.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have any left. So now the table's incentivized to let the windfall resolve too. And so we windfall, and maybe I guess that's when I draw the Mirror Maid, the Rhystic, and the Sphinx, because those are the cards that won me the game. So then I don't have any blue mana left, so I just kind of have the pass, but I have like a piece of free interaction in hand, like I don't even remember, maybe it was like a Fierce or something like that. And I pass the turn. I just have like Burgi, Rog, some rocks in play, and a Fierce, and all value engines in hand. Tivit goes to their turn, and they miss a land drop. They play like some rocks, like maybe like an Arcane Signet or vice versa. And then we go to Kinnan. Kinnan's establishing their board, and it's starting to get scary. We go back. The other player's dead. We go back to my turn, and I'm able to go Ristic, and then use the Ristic to leverage stopping some attempts by the Kinnan player. They put the Salt on the stack, etc. We go back to my turn. I Mirror Maid the Ristic. I keep drawing cards, and each time I'm looking at my hand, and I'm just like, I can win this game whenever I want, and yet I am not going for it. And it's such an odd feeling. Like I can't explain it. Like it's just the weirdest. Like, and what was crazy is the Doomsday player. He's like a friend of mine. And he's sitting next to me, and I wanted to like show him my hand almost, but I also thought he would like react so wildly.
He would emotionally leak your hand.
Whoa! Right, I had everything. Like I had like flash enablers, breach. Like I literally had everything. So we just keep going around. Tivit puts a Tivit on the stack, and I just looked at my hand and was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And I was just like, cool. Like, sure, it resolves. So like Tivit resolves. We go to the Kinnan player's turn. They put a Sphinx into play, either through a Kinnan flip or casting it. I can't remember. And I again looked at my hand and was like, all right, whatever. Like, I know I have a flash enabler, and now they're tapped out. So like I can beat, because I have double Ristic, I can beat going through these loops by just playing on top of them and resolving a defense grid. So we go to my turn. I put a Mystic Remora into play. So now I have Remora, Ristic, and Ristic, which has been copied by the Mirror Maid. There's a Consphinx in play and a Tivit in play. I set myself up to have like the perfect scenario by resolving a High Fate Trickster. Like I like main phase it, and also having like a bunch of gas in hand and a bunch of ways to convert mana with a Burgie in play and just pass the turn. And don't go for the win right there. And the whole team, the Doomsday player literally was like, "What? Like, dude, you just like you had everything." And I was like,
"There's no reason for you to go for it."
Yeah.
And it was like the classic example. So I know I'm going long, so I'm not going to go too detailed. But essentially, just we go to the Tivit player's turn. They do something kind of smart, like they crack a couple of their clues that they have or something like that. Or maybe the Consphinx isn't even out yet. Maybe that's this turn cycle. I can't really remember. But they crack some clues. Yeah, and they are really tanking on what to do next. And I hadn't said a word. Like I had been very silent this turn cycle. And I looked at him and said, if you try to go to combat and make this happen, like if you try to basically resolve the attack trigger, you're going to force me to push. That's all I said.
Yeah.
And I didn't explain what that meant, but I have triple draw engines in play. So he's looking at that like, oh shit. Like,
he can probably guess what it means.
Yeah, he doesn't want me to throw a Hail Mary. We both fight over everything, use all of our interaction, and I draw a billion cards, and then we go to Kinnan's turn and Kinnan wins, kind of thing. So he didn't. He just passed the turn. He didn't go to combat. And we go to the Kinnan's turn, and then me and the Tivit player have to do everything we can to stop the Kinnan from winning. So the Kinnan goes for a bunch of win attempts over and over again. We stop them. They've got a bunch of backup. I'm drawing a billion cards from it through the process. And then they leave up enough mana specifically just so that they can flip Kinnan. We go to my turn. I try to go for the win, and they put a Consphinx into play on top of a Clever Impersonator. I put a Clever Impersonator on the stack.
Okay.
So the Sphinx enters, and the Tivit player puts that enchantment that has Storm that turns everything into a 1/1
downpour.
Amphibian downpour. Yeah.
They do that on like the Kinnan and everything else, but the Sphinx, because of the way that the stack worked out, the Sphinx comes into play anyways. And I end up with a Clever Impersonator still on the stack with a High Fate Trickster in play. And what looks like I'm totally tapped out of interaction. Like we fight back and drawing the Sphinx a bunch of cards through the process. They go to put a Swords to Plowshares on my High Fate Trickster, and at this point I've already resolved a breach. So I just look at this board and this crazy stack, and I just sack the High Fate Trickster to the Phyrexian Tower so that it doesn't get exiled, making mana. It goes into my graveyard, and then I can flash it back out of the graveyard using the Underworld Breach, and then I found a win from there.
Wow.
So cool.
Like, yeah, it was just another example of like the literal exact paradigm of what you guys were talking about just wait, use the flash enablers and the billions of cards to force through the win once you have the last say so, like on top of everything else.
There's like no
which
punishment.
is very different.
There's no angle of punishment for waiting. So if you wait,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, well, I either have to wait until there's like a Grand Abolisher on the stack, as you said, or somebody's trying to resolve a breach and then breach is the last thing on the stack. Like that's my window. And then that's the window to go for. Or there's the last thing on the stack is like Thassa's Oracle and the trigger. And like that's the window. There's no angle for your opponents to punish you once it gets down to that point.
And something I love about your story is it's not that you were this passive actor to the whole game. It's not that for an hour straight you're saying pass priority, pass priority, pass priority. You are making these small deals, you're communicating, you're sharing information, you're getting information, you're drawing cards. But the only thing you're not doing is making a win attempt right until that window opens and you're unstoppable. And that is a degree of patience. I know I'm still really trying to like garner myself as a CDH player because I think that reaction you were kind of expecting the Vohar player to have is a pretty reasonable reaction.
Yeah.
We're in CDH. We love drawing cards. We love to win. So when you see a solid 7 that just says I win right now on it, it's really hard not to jump the gun. But over the course of that story, I really appreciate getting to hear all those little interactions that even though you already had all the cards in hand for a win, you needed the board to be ready for you to win.
Yep. Yeah, it was very weird still, like looking back on it. It's it's not the best descriptor, but it really was an odd experience for me because it's so counterintuitive to the way that I've normally been playing. And normally when I'm playing, I feel the heat. I feel a timer of every turn, every spell, because I know what's going to happen is the mid-range players are going to get enough cards to where there's overwhelming advantage. It doesn't even really matter if I'm going to go for more. And so I have to get under that. And I felt the exact opposite. I felt no heat, no pressure, and it was just like, yeah, I'm going to, like, I guess one thing I didn't talk about is in the very first game, I showed my hand as a political play to two of the players twice. Like, I was just like they were trying to make an argument that they were going to win if blah, blah, and I was like, nope. And I just showed him my hand.
No, you're not.
I was like,
unless you have
this is actually what I'm doing.
Unless you have like 3 tutors and a bunch of mana, or if you have like Breach in your hand, or if you've got Thassa's Oracle in your hand. If you don't have any of those things in your hand, I'm like here, see my hand. There's what are you going to look at that is important to you? There's literally nothing. What can you discern from
You know
this?
what it reminds me of?
Huh?
This is a weird analogy if you've played poker, I guess, but like if you're playing like Texas Hold'em and you have like 2-7 offsuit and you like really want to bait the opponent into going all in, so you go all, and they're like hemming and hawing on what they should do. It's literally like flipping your hand to them and being like, I have 2-7 offsuit pre-flop. Like, this isn't scary. Like, do whatever you want, I guess, but like, this is what I got. So now you just took the biggest, like, most powerful element of poker out of the game, which is the deception and the trying to read people. There's nothing to read. Like,
Yeah.
I'm face up, like it is what it is. But the big difference, obviously, is that in that situation, you're in a terrible spot and you're about to get terrible pot odds when the flop lands. Like, you have very low chances to hit anything.
Right.
But the way this feels is that instead you have like these secret engines that are living on your board that basically say, sure, once they go all in, then also my hand is going to change a few times. So you're like incentivized to want to keep going. It was just a very odd.
Well, and then if you're not showing them win cons, what are the other options to show them? They're either draw engines that are in your hand, which you haven't played yet, or counter spells, and they go, oh shit, I really can't push here. And then you've just extended the game another 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a great example of something that we were talking about earlier, is the value of brewer's advantage. When you're playing CDH, of people don't know when to interact, or they see pieces on your board and it's like their eyes glaze over because they just don't understand it. But I think this conversation is revealing kind of the flip side of that, which is brewer's disadvantage. You were talking earlier about if you're playing RAL, you really don't have the option of giving that information up because it really doesn't mean anything,
Yeah.
right? To you it looks like 2 offsuit 7s. To the other players, it's literally hieroglyphics. So you're not able to make
it's
those
super
deals.
scary. Like,
Yeah.
I know grape shot's not that scary in my deck until the very last card I put on the stack. But they see a storm deck with like a couple rituals and a grape shot in hand, they're like, oh crap, what do we do? Like sometimes it's almost like I can't show it to them because they'll misevaluate it, and there's nothing I'm going to do to tell them otherwise.
Yeah. And once people reach that threshold of being scared, it's so hard to bring them down, as opposed to if you're playing a deck that's kind of boring, it's not sexy. It's not like, ooh, look at all these interesting cards. They're going to see a Phyrexian Metamorph. They're going to see a Fierce Guardianship, 2 lands, and a Felwar Stone. They will forget what's in your hand as soon as they stop looking at it, because it's not that interesting. You're not winning with novelty. You're winning by being the last person to go for it,
or the best player at the table,
or just being
combination.
extremely skilled and very competent at your fundamentals. That too.
Yeah, the fundamentals play a big part into the deck style of this, and this is another way that I've extracted some sort of value from like the way I play Glarb, and going, okay, well, I don't think that deck is the best, and I wasn't really trying to prove a point when I played that, but learning a lot of lessons from that and going to this style of deck, I'm like, it really comes down to fundamentals, and then it's politics, and then it's maybe deck construction a little bit, and reading the meta, but having those fundamentals and working with the table and making these deals, or just showing, so like, hey, there's no window for us to do anything here, or there's no window for you to even push, we just lose to this player. I think this deck construction style kind of lends well to those facets.
Yeah, and it lets you kind of focus on the things in the game that matter, and also it just gives you so many tools. I think that story you were telling about poker is super interesting, because I imagine people probably aren't used to playing Texas Hold'em with the knowledge of everything that their opponents have in hand.
Right.
And so they've got all these hours, all this experience that you have just single-handedly dismantled. And now they're in a place where even though they have more information than they had before, they're surprisingly unprepared for the situation that's presented for them. And so not that giving information to your opponents is always the right move or never move, kind of going back to the conversation about heuristics, but practicing finding those ways that you can, in a productive and collaborative way, kind of cause a little unrest or unease in your opponents, right? Because you're working with them. You're kind of going back to that language of temporary teammates. You're giving them information. This is a bad time to push, but you're also creating situations that are just difficult to navigate.
Well, when you're putting draw engines on the stack, you're not presenting any information that's valuable to them other than you might draw more cards. And so if you're not putting a combo piece down on the, let's say a TNT player plays Devoted Druid, I am then in my brain going, oh shit, they have a Devoted Druid, they can put it in the yard at any time, and that is the thing that I'm trying to lock away for them. But this deck never does that.
Yeah,
there's no point where I have combo piece A on the board or is visible, and then my opponents are then staring at it and going, well, he already has A. He's just trying to find B.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I think a language that I've heard both of you guys use individually, respective of each other, is things that are a problem now or things that are a problem later.
Right.
And I think part of that is inherent to the card itself. And I think part of that can also be in the presentation. Kind of going back to that, what you're talking about, the gamble in your first game, your opponents were reading that as a problem now. But all you have to do is give a little bit of information, and suddenly it becomes a problem for later. No one cares if you get an Ancient Tomb if you're in third seat, right?
Right. Dude, I'm gambling for the double land. Here's my hand. What am I going to gamble for that presents a problem for you anywhere in the next 4 turns? Nothing. I can't get any single piece.
And I think that's a really great way to help grind is, instead of getting your Esper Sentinel misstepped, you can say, to your opponent, help me see the board state through your eyes, because from where I'm sitting, this Esper Sentinel is good for you, and it seems like you disagree. So let's find a way to meet in the middle on that.
I like that.
And the more ways that you can kind of like just not get your stuff countered, the better equipped you are at the end of the game to outvalue your opponents, instead of having these weird interactions where the smallest person at the table gets the biggest advantage by turn 2, and you know they have a Thassa's Oracle and Decon and just no one has anything for it. Instead, you're really able to, for better or for worse, end up in this gigantic counterspell battle every single time. Love it or hate it. That's
Hate it is the answer. But yeah.
That's the point we've made a lot in a lot of our videos about this deck or this meta, and we're like, I'm not happy about it, but I'm able to convert and turn the corner. So like, what am I gonna do? You know?
Right. Yeah. I didn't like Luris. It was just garbage in Modern. It just did so many dumb things. But like, that's fine. I built around it, and it was amazing.
Right.
So yeah, I totally agree.
So that was your experience in Swiss, and I know we've been talking for a while, and I think our viewers who've stuck around this long. Let's talk about. I'm assuming it's like top 4 cut, or
No, this was literally just like a super tiny 3-round.
Oh, okay.
Like weekly, basically.
Okay, so
yeah.
you guys
So
don't,
it was
don't
just
top cut at all. You just
if there were like if we got much above 20 players, then we probably would.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just a small weekly, so it just goes off points.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
I was first in points, so
Wow.
it was
a
just clean win at the end of the tournament. And every single round went to time, so I was like mentally just like I was like, okay, I'm packing up my cards and going
the
to get some
hell out.
Wendy's or whatever.
Get me out of here. I want that biggie bag.
yeah. What's the Wendy's order?
Legit, dude. I can't believe you just said that. I went, no joke, was ordering the biggie bag, and I was messaging you on Discord in the other hand, being like, yeah,
I'm like, bro, I just took locals, and I'm like sleeping.
Dude, that's how you know you play a Denver deck, is that it goes to every time, and you've burned like 1,000 calories by the end of it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, fried. But yeah, now I got a bunch of store credit at that store, so that's
hell yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, it was like an awesome experience, because the main thing I wanted to get from it, like winning was cool, but like the main thing I wanted to get from it was to really deeply kind of see the perspective of like how the other half lives, so to speak. And I did, and it has been very helpful for sure.
So do you think is this gonna inspire you to not change RAL, but like assess other decks in different ways, or
Oh, definitely, it changes
this
my
style?
assessment for sure.
Okay.
I think it's like it'll do two huge things. One, it really helps my threat assessment, understanding of what people are like actually trying to do when they're playing, and like what's scary and what isn't, and like all that kind of. But the big thing too is it just basically like kind of confirms or like further cements the way that I've been building RAL, which is no single card should be so scary that anyone even feels like they need to counter it. And that's like the only reason why I think that deck is even good, is because like the whole deck is cantrips and rituals. So go for it. Like,
I've seen a local RAL player cast Frantic Search, and I'm just looking at the table and I'm like, is this my interaction point? Like, I'm not really sure.
Do I have to use
and that's
the
what I'm
only
trying to instill
counterspell
in
I've left on a brainstorm?
Do I want the story of this game to be like, oh hell yeah, I interacted with Frantic Search and we didn't lose because of it, but then I lost to the next player? Like I totally get that.
For sure. Yeah. So that's it. Just kind of further cements that like every time that my like lizard brain starts telling me I should be playing like tinkering or the big score or whatever huge big payoff cool thing that makes treasures and draws, but gets blown the fuck out by a single counter spell, and then my turn ends, like I'm gonna be like, no, like remember your days playing mid-range Rogsai.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
we're right here with you, brother. It's the I think we've referenced, or at least I've referenced a lot, that podcast that Jason, the other member of Critical EDH, sent me from Joking 101. But like, are you playing to win, or are you playing to prove a point? And both are incredibly reasonable and good motivators to enter a tournament in. But like playing to prove a point, results in you playing decks that aren't necessarily the decks you're playing if you're playing to win. And so especially just trying to get that practice, getting out of the Swiss swamp, trying to more consistently take down tournaments in top 16 or top 4s. I think things like you did of even just for a single, Thursday or Friday night, picking up a meta deck just to run it through its paces, just so that you're that much more informed about what your opponents have in their hands. It's a really, really valuable experience.
Yeah, it was for me for sure. It was awesome. And nice job brewing the list too.
Thanks.
Sick.
Anything like final thoughts? Like, do you think you'll run the deck again? Do you think any standout cards or anything you'd change at this point?
I fundamentally dislike the game plan of the deck, so it's hard for me to like. I just mean from like a fun standpoint, right? Like that's not fun.
Hey, wait, you still got to storm off though. Like, it's just about the window of when you storm off. It's about the window of, okay, now I have cards in my hand, and now I've assembled all of those pieces, and now I can storm off later in the game when no one has anything, instead of storming off underneath. You're storming on top.
I fundamentally disagree with the deck.
I don't like it either. I really don't, but I want to play Rogside. I don't think there's another way to play it right now.
I'm just being real. Like I would never play the deck for strictly enjoyment, I guess. I would definitely play this deck if my whole goal was to take down a tournament.
Oh wow.
Like,
okay.
Like, you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I also
absolutely.
Personally, now granted, I have so many reps on it, so it's a lot more of a comfortability factor too. And there's the flip side of this, which is I feel really comfortable in Swiss playing Turbo. Like it's very easy for me to convert to top 16s. So it just kind of depends on like how I see the meta, and also like if it's a really long tournament, like a multi-day event or a super long day event, like, do I really want to be spending this much brain power going time every round? Mm-hmm. Do I want to like the table and like hope for the best and then go get my snack break in between rounds? Because there's also something to be said for like the actual tournament experience too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think this is like this deck, or like the TNK list that Jason was talking about, or like just like this general concept of like almost playing win con list min range, like is very good and like a formidable way to be approaching the meta.
I think that's a good way to put it, and I think that's probably what I'm going to title this video, is like win conless decks and somehow taking down tournaments with them, because that's been happening.
Yeah, or at the it seems, at least right now in this moment, a very accurate assessment of the meta and the tournament scene that we're in. Some other things I think we would love to hear about is what are other things kind of going on in the CDH scene in Arizona. Are there any tournaments you want to shout out, or you mentioned that you play at the store a lot. If any of our viewers are in Arizona, what are things you want them to know about the CDH scene down there?
I actually have to head out of here pretty shortly. Like, okay,
we'll tie it up.
Taking this call. But yeah, short version is just if you're ever in the Tucson area, we have an amazing store called Arcanum Sanctorum, just like the local store that we support, that puts on really awesome events and actually puts up like really good pricing for the cost of the events and that kind of thing. And then we always do a monthly, and it's normally the first week of the month, and it garners about 40 people, but it just keeps increasing. So every event that we've only had like 3 at this new store. Each one has had like 10 more players. So it keeps going up. People are coming in from Phoenix and Prescott and Scottsdale and other areas. And this monthly is going to be happening instead of the first week, because that's Fishbowl 4 or 5.
5.
Yeah, 5. This instead it'll be the following week. So the second
we're going to be there. Are you going to be at Fishbowl?
Unfortunately, no.
Dang.
No. I'm going to be at I'm going to be at my stepsister's wedding, which is pretty important.
Oh,
so I'm going to be there. And
reasonable
I'll be in
excuse.
New Jersey though, so that part's going to suck. But yeah, it's unfortunate because I had a blast at Fishbowl last time, and I think it'd be really cool to show up and do the thing. But
awesome.
Yeah, that's right. I would say if anybody out there has any interest in any of the decks also that I'm working on, I love being collaborative. So yeah, check out my Mox Field or my YouTube.
Oh yeah, I mean that's how we you and I got connected, and I just want to say thanks for chilling with us for well over an hour and sort of sharing your experiences. I'm sure we'll have some more conversations in the future. This was super awesome.
But yeah, thanks for taking your time. We love getting to hear about tournaments in general, but especially the CDH meta and how shaking out where you're at, and ways that we can kind of learn from that and incorporate that into our own play experience. And yeah, if any of our viewers are in Arizona, for sure check out Arcanum Sanctorum. You said, great name. And thank you for staying to the end of this episode.
Yep.
Like, have a good one, man.
All right, thanks.